Good morning, everybody. My name is David, and I'm here with Drew, and he's going to tell his targeting story. He's been targeted since 2007 that he knows of, maybe longer. And Drew, I just wanted to thank you for coming on, and I just wanted to start out asking you, uh, um, when did your targeting start, and what did you experience to to know that, hey, this is a target. This is targeting. You know what I'm saying? Like, how did you find out about targeting?
Yeah. Well, at first, I didn't even realize what was going on, of course, which is probably pretty common experience for a lot of people, especially in Canada. In Canada, it's been a bit different for this program. Which let's just be clear, first of all, the targeting that we're discussing here, that we're talking about, is by the Five Eyes intelligence group, and they're supposed to be protecting national security by identifying people in whatever terrorist database they have. In the United States, it's called the TSDB, the Terrorist Screening Database. In Canada, they have a list of CSIS targets. Last year, I think they published that there are 320 CSIS targets in Canada. There's obviously a lot more in the States where you're from. And okay, so the yeah,
I'm glad
sorry,
you
what was the
mentioned the
question?
Five Eyes, by the. I'm glad you mentioned the Five Eyes, by the way, because a lot of
Yeah,
targets don't understand what the Five Eyes are, but that is very real. No, the question was like, when did your targeting start, and how did you find out
right.
about targeted individuals?
Yeah, and by the way, I've begun sort of colloquially referring to the Five Eyes group as the Five Eyes terror group because of what they're doing. It's really inappropriate that
Could you
in
kind of
every case
explain
that
what
I've
the
seen.
Five Eyes for are?
Yeah, well, it's just basically the intelligence collective of the UK, Canada, the US, Australia, New Zealand. Those five countries. They've expanded it to like nine eyes or 18 eyes or whatever, and adding other countries, so on and so forth. But the original Five Eyes are those five countries, and so their intelligence agencies that are supposed to be protecting national security are sort of information sharing and so forth, and they have a certain relationship. So that's the CIA, CSIS, I forget the New Zealand and Australia ones, and the UK would be GCHQ and MI5, MI6, all those things. So they're supposed to be, checking,
Profiling.
check, checking on people to make sure, and then identifying possible threats to national security, and then doing things about it to protect the nation. But what in my experience, they've actually been doing is targeting people that are contributing to the political process, like me. They've been targeting vulnerable individuals, like my friend Michelle, who's on the autism spectrum and has difficulty in social situations, finds it hard to build a social group of support and so forth. So, targeting someone like that to do mind control experiments, like MK Ultra type experiments, it'd be very difficult for that sort of person normally to explain it to anyone, have them believe them, or to build any support to fight back against it. So they're targeting people based upon, they're basically like picking disabled people and terrorizing them just to for whatever purpose. I mean, who knows why they did the original MK Ultra, but they're still doing it, and they just gotten more clever about who they're targeting. In fact, I've actually traced this whole ideology and these experiments back to 1945, and Operation Paperclip, when all the Nazi war criminals were, assessed and determined that they could be potentially useful for various organizations, the military, NASA, the CIA. They were brought over secretly to the United States and indoctrinated into or
Yeah, and they were
inducted
supposed
into
to
those
die for war
organizations.
crimes in the
Yeah,
United
they
States.
they basically helped them get away with
And
it.
you know why? You know
And
why they call it paperclip, don't you? Because they put a paperclip on the files of the people to look over and create new identities for and bring them over here.
yeah,
So
it
they
was
were going
originally
through
apparently called Operation Overcast, but
the.
then anyway, basically the idea is that they brought all the Nazi war criminals that were doing unethical human experiments on Jewish people. They brought them over to the United States, gave them, asylum so they didn't have to face charges for war crimes, and then gave them an infinite budget to
Yep.
do whatever they want and no accountability. Said just go do whatever you want. Nobody's going to even check what you're doing, and run with it. And then what do you expect to happen? Of course, they started the MK Ultra project, which was exactly what they were doing in Nazi Germany against Jewish people. They just started doing it in hospitals and institutions. They were doing it in Canada here. The CIA was caught doing that. There's a class action lawsuit against them. And then they're still doing stuff like that. Targeted Justice Inc. has a class action lawsuit they're starting for targeted individuals in the United States. There's not much in Canada yet. Like the legal profession in Canada, I think, is way more corrupt than in the States, unfortunately. And that's a big part of my story. Is like as soon as I get exonerated for what they did to me, all that truth's going to come out.
Could you
So anyway,
explain?
just to go back to the very beginning that I know of, back in 2007, there were a bunch of things that happened that certainly raised a bunch of red flags throughout the intelligence community internationally. For instance, I passed the Mensa test, which is the High IQ Society. I released a proxy service, which is like an internet application that allows a person to get through a firewall and to access information freely on the internet and anonymously. So I got contacted by the FBI back in 2007, 2008, sometime around there. Special Agent Boeing contacted me through my ISP in the States because I was outside of the continental US, so he wasn't technically allowed to contact me directly. He had to do it through the ISP. Anyway, he was like saying someone had supposedly used my proxy service to cause damage to a political site, and he wanted information about it. I mean, I don't know how legitimate that was. I think probably they were just checking me out to see who I was, because like all of a sudden, who the hell is this guy? He's running this proxy service, and it was a really cool one too because it had stealth encryption. So it looked like it was going on plain text. So all the internet filters that were filtering plain text would be checking it to see if they could filter anything, but they were never filtering anything because it was actually encrypted, but it didn't look like it was encrypted. So even the Great Firewall China, supposedly they were able to get through that with my firewall. Like it was called Proxeasy. And actually a state trooper from Missouri or something contacted me as well. Someone had supposedly used my proxy site to do something weird there. And anyway, so a bunch of things happened. And then that's also when I started working on a whistleblower project, like a government expenses watchdog called governmentexpenses.ca, and it got a lot of media attention. It was the political magazine in Canada is called Maclean's Magazine. That's like a big, huge publication. They actually did a bunch of articles, but they did one initial big article about my project. There was even a reference to it on the cover of the magazine, and they were referring to it as being one of the most important contributions to the political process. So all this happened like in rapid succession all of a sudden. And from out of nowhere, this guy that nobody had ever heard of or knew anything about appeared and was apparently very skilled and capable at doing political project things and internet security things and whatever. And
You
so
said you passed the Mensa test?
yeah, Mensa High
Could
IQ
you
Society.
explain what that is? It's a high
Yeah,
IQ test?
it's a high IQ society.
Okay.
Basically, if you have a certain IQ, you can take a test, and if you pass it, then you're a member of the Mensa.
I'm sure it gets
Actually,
you put on a watch list too if you pass it, huh?
I would imagine, yeah. Well, in my case, anyway. Here's my
Yeah.
Mensa card.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a high IQ society. So like that basically tells them, okay, this guy's at least as smart as the smartest people in their organization, and if I wanted to do something that they didn't like, they'd have difficulty in trying to prevent that. So anyway, the things I first started noticing were that my mail was getting stolen, and it was happening. Like different people were stealing my mail in different provinces. So initially I was in Newfoundland at the time, Newfoundland, Canada, and I had found a roommate on the internet so I could like share expenses and have a cheaper place to live in, basically. And the roommate, I guess it must have been him because he's the only one who had a mail key. He was basically stealing my mail, and I realized this because I was getting mail order DVDs from it was similar to Netflix at the time. It was called Zip.ca. It was the Canadian version of the Netflix DVD rental service, and they were going missing. And the company is like saying like, "Hey, we sent these DVDs. Where are they going?" Right? And I was like, "I don't know. I didn't get them." Right? So anyway, that started happening there. I moved to a different place, and then when I didn't have that roommate, suddenly I was getting all my mail. Then I moved to Halifax, and I had another roommate that I'd found on the internet there, and my DVDs started going missing again. And so this was like, okay, if it was just one person in one place, maybe that person's just a kleptomaniac, right? But it started happening, the identical thing, stealing my mail in different places, and it's like, who does that? Like that's weird. Like that's a major, that's an indictable offense here in Canada, which is like a major crime, stealing people's mail. Like it just didn't seem reasonable for a person to just want to do that for no reason, right? Like it wasn't like there's anything really valuable in this mail. But I've since found out that's the standard thing they do when they're spying on someone. They steal their mail. And it's been happening here in Vancouver as well, in a place I was living in. They call it an SRO, single room occupancy, which is basically just like a converted hotel where you just have a room. You don't even have a bathroom or a kitchen or anything like that. But a super cheap place to live because I'm homeless actually. Um,
And you
and
wasn't home. You was doing good before targeting. You mean you
I was
wasn't
doing
homeless
pretty all
before
right. Yeah,
targeting?
like I had a business. I was running an IT consulting business. I had a bunch of websites. I had my proxy service, which was making me like $2,000 a month. And I had online dating site, which was making me a couple $100 a month. I had a bunch of other sites. I was starting a nonprofit group to organize social events in downtown Halifax.
And
And
now
I'd
you're
reached,
homeless. I'm just trying to shut the narrative and
yeah,
show. I'm trying to show
yeah.
audiences in my thing how they
Well,
destroy
now,
lives.
yeah,
You know.
after surviving multiple attempts on my life and being a political prisoner for 10 years, uh, just kicked me to the curb. They made sure to drain me of all my resources, all my money, make sure I didn't have anything saved up, and then kicked me to the curb, had with nothing, so they could continue targeting me. Um, but yeah, like that's a
Did you
whole
go
long
through a
story.
lot of targeting in prison in your 10 years as a political prisoner? Like, did they do any
Um,
psyops games with you or
there
anything
was
like
a
that?
bunch of that, but I, I got really bad ADHD, and when I'm in an emotional, potentially life-threatening situation, I get really fucking crazy, like dangerous crazy. So the people that tried to target me, I would lash back because I'm in prison already. I was in there for surviving a murder, basically. They framed me after I survived an attempt on my life. And so I had nothing to lose, right? So people did not target me for very long before I went completely psycho on them, and they were literally scared for their lives. And like that's what you have to do in prison. You have to
Oh yeah.
retaliate.
Yep.
So like these kinds of things I had to do were really scary, but people knew immediately, like, don't fuck with this guy. Do not fuck with this guy.
Right.
You might die.
Right.
So yeah, so I mean that was pretty messed up. I'm not pleased with some of the things, but I never actually had to hurt anyone for real. I just had to like get like really like get to the point where it's like they knew like I had to pull a shank on a sheriff one time because he threatened to bash my head in. But rest assured, after that, yeah, I got charged for it, and they went on the stand and lied a bunch of things, but whatever. I did actually do it, and but after that, they were really nice to me. Like they were extra nice because they're like, okay, this like with it, like I was never mean to them. I didn't do anything. I was having difficulties because they wouldn't let me have a lawyer, and then one day they wouldn't let me up in the courtroom, so I couldn't even talk to the judge. And I was like, listen, I need to get up in the courtroom. And they're trying to put handcuffs on me and take me out. And I'm like, no, I gotta get up to the courtroom to talk to the judge. Like, what are you doing? Like, there's evidence I need to get here to prove my innocence. And then this one sheriff was just like, having a bad day or something. He said, let me, like, I'll bash your fucking head in or something, right? So I was like, holy shit, that's not okay. Yeah, so there's a lot of messed up things, but yeah, they started out, and in Canada, they started out just spying, and at the time, that's all they were allowed to do. Now in Canada, they're allowed to do more. Ever since Stephen Harper, the Prime Minister, as he was leaving in 2015, he did Bill C-51, which was some sort of Terrorism Act thing. Anyway, it gives CSIS, the spy agency, all sorts of extra powers. They call it kinetic powers. So before they were just allowed to spy on you and do things that didn't actually necessarily disrupt your life too much. Now they're allowed to do disruptive activities. So this has caused a number of problems. The biggest problem is that they were doing sleep deprivation stuff,
Oh
which
yeah.
is an international human right violation. It's torture, and they're not allowed to cause bodily harm. Like, they're allowed to do various disruptive things. They do psyops, like they call it no-touch torture. So they send, gang stalkers to like come and say certain things or do certain things, and they're supposed to trigger you. One of the CSIS people that I was talking to, it was a parole officer. Um, it's funny how a lot of them, they just like admit to all sorts of things with me. So I know way more than I'm supposed to. But she, I guess, sort of tricked me into signing a waiver to get some personal psychiatric medical information. And so there was a medical assessment that was done that listed, like, supposedly all my psychological vulnerabilities. At the time that it was done, I noticed that it was like just it was a fake assessment, basically. Like, they listed all these things that might bother, because I'm on the autism spectrum, so they just listed general things that might bother a person on the autism spectrum without regard to whether or not it actually did bother me. Nevertheless, as soon as CSIS got access to that, boom, all the things that were on that list started happening. All sorts of people started coming from nowhere, from out of the woodwork, doing all these things, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all that
Could you
were
explain
listed
some
in
of them
this medical
things?
file. What's that?
Could you explain some of the things they did?
Yeah. Okay. So they said certain smells bother me. Okay. So they'd send people around that smelled like certain things. They said that certain behaviors bothered me, like being authoritarian towards me. So then all these people come along and be like authoritarian, like dramatically emphasizing, the authoritarian type attitude and whatever.
Street theater
There
at its finest.
Yeah, and right, like it was so blatantly obvious, and that stuff doesn't actually bother me anyway. And then, like, one of the things that I mentioned to this parole officer who also stole and helped weaponize my personal medical information, to no avail, by the way. Like, I'm immune to all that stuff, fortunately. A friend of mine isn't, and it causes serious problems there, but we can talk about that later maybe. But one of the things I mentioned to her was that when I was in the halfway house, there was the roommate I had was like jingling his keys around his neck all the time, and I was like, I mentioned to her that that kind of bothered me, because when you're inside prison and you hear the keys jingling, that means the guard's coming down the hallway. And so, like, you got to make sure you're not doing anything weird looking that he's gonna, look into and cause you problems or whatever. So, hearing keys, it's like, oh, the guard's coming. It can put you into a little state of readiness. So I mentioned that to her, and then all of a sudden, all these people started jingling their keys like dramatically right in front of me.
Hmm.
So yeah, like, she made a point of saying, "Oh, I didn't realize about the keys thing," and then, like, after that, people start jingling their keys, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting. One thing I put on my Facebook after that was, I said, "Boy, it sure is hard to get used to people being allowed to whistle on the outside, because when you're in jail, whistling is like a really bad thing for an inmate to do. You're not allowed to whistle. There's some, I don't know, folklore tale about how the guards used to whistle when they were walking down the hall to come and get a guy to, like, torture him or do something to him, like maybe for executions or something. Anyway, whistling,
Wow.
just one of the jail codes. If you're in jail, I don't know if it's the same in the United States, probably is, but in Canada, you're not allowed to whistle. Like, that's a big bad thing to do. You do that, you're going to get beat up. So one of the things I posted on my website is, wow, it's really hard to get used to people whistling, right? Because like you never hear that when you're in a prison. And so ever since I posted that, then there's like people just like all over the place coming along whistling. Like, it's like,
Wow.
once in a while it's normal, but like when it happens like 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 100 times a day, all over the place, it's like, okay, this is obviously not normal. So all the things that they think are going to bother you, they do that. And
Yeah.
there's a whole list of stuff on the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights. If you Google United Nations target harassment techniques, it usually comes up the first result in Google, and it's like it's from the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights for United Nations, and harassment techniques include surveillance, being followed, electronic surveillance, computer phone hacking, monitoring. Profiles are built to identify weaknesses. Like all these things in here, there's 15 items, and they pretty much follow that to a T.
Have you heard of the Allen Memorial Institute experiments class action in Quebec,
No.
Canada?
Allen Memorial, is that to
Yeah,
do with the MK
I
Ultra
got a tweet
project?
yesterday and it says, the Supreme Court, and said Allen Memorial Institute experiment class action. The Supreme Court of Canada has rejected our request for permission to appeal the case's definitive dismiss against the U.S. government, but will
Huh.
continue against other defendants. So I just
Oh.
wondered, I seen the tweet and somebody asked me to retweet it, and I was just wondering if you knew about it because it's out of Quebec.
Yeah, that's where they caught them doing MK Ultra back in the 70s.
Okay.
And so I guess they're still probably trying to get justice for some of those people because they really
Yeah, that's
messed
what
them
I
up.
was thinking. Yeah, it had to have been that because I haven't heard of nothing new. Some people actually did get justice in Canada, didn't they? A few people.
Yep, yeah, supposedly, which is surprising. Which is kind of weird that this appeal was rejected. Oh, here, MK Ultra mind control experiments. Quebec High Court says U.S. has immunity in Canada. Wow.
Yeah, see.
Wow, that's kind of a problem. So that actually, you know what? That's
That
that's
means they
actually
can do what
good
they
for
want
me
in
because
Canada
this
to
gives me
whoever, right?
leverage. What's that?
So that basically means they can experiment on whoever they want and get away with it. That's basically what
Yeah,
immunity
except
is.
there is a caveat. And I've seen, okay, so doing that against innocent civilians, against any civilians really, against a group of people in Canada is an act of terrorism. And so our national security group is supposed to be thwarting acts of terrorism, supposed to be stopping people from committing acts of terrorism against the public, supposed to be protecting the public, right? And there's 2 complaints so far that I've done with the Accountability Agency in Canada. I think it's probably similar to the DNI in the States. Anyway, it's called the NSIRA, National Security Intelligence Review Agency. And so they're supposed to be looking into what the spy agency CSIS here is doing, which is similar to your CIA, and making sure that they're following the law, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and keeping them accountable. So I've had multiple complaints with them mainly because of the sleep deprivation thing that was going on. Now, 2 times they have actually denied. The first time they just said, "Oh, it's not in our jurisdiction," which I assumed meant that they were implying that it was CIA people doing it and they don't have jurisdiction over CIA. CSIS often, when they want to get away with something, they have, the CIA do it for them. So they can say, "Oh, that wasn't us. No, that's not. We didn't do that. That was them. And there's actually news stories about them doing that, which is pretty sleazy. And I mean, it's not okay. But in any case, they're supposed to be stopping groups and like they're supposed to be stopping terrorist activity from occurring in this country. So if the CIA is doing things in Canada that's considered terrorist activity, CSIS is supposed to be stopping them. They're not supposed to be helping them, and they're not supposed to be, inspiring them to do that, telling them to do that, whatever it is that happens behind the scenes. They're supposed to be stopping that. And actually, there's a big question right now. back in 2020, there was a mass shooting in Nova Scotia, and it was the biggest mass shooting in the country's history. Now, there's a reporter, Paul Palango, who does reporting for Maclean's magazine about, among other things. Anyway, he published an article and a bunch of evidence demonstrating that the shooter was paid a huge, like over $500,000 before this shooting took place, and that the way he was paid, it had the hallmarks of an undercover operation. So
Now, did he get killed after he done that?
oh yeah, he got gunned down by the
So I
RCMP.
wonder if he transferred the money to whoever after he got paid before he went and done it to take
That
care of somebody.
yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that happened, and like a lot of it, it's kind of weird. It was unclear exactly at first. It's interesting though, because as soon as when that story came out saying that it looked like he was an undercover informant for like maybe the RCMP or something, or maybe I think they were trying to frame the RCMP. Like I think he was either CSIS or CIA, probably CIA realistically. And I think that they were trying to frame the RCMP because he was driving around. He had an RCMP car with
And
all
for
the
those who
RCMP
wondering what
members.
RCP is, that's
Oh
Royal
yeah, I
Canadian
just
Police.
realized that's the federal policing agency in Canada.
Yeah.
It's the same as the FBI.
He was driving around in the car. That's where you were at.
Yeah, he's driving around basically in an FBI car. If you're, but it was RCMP because it's Canada. He was driving around in an RCMP car with a uniform, RCMP uniform, a federal police uniform, and a bunch of guns, and he was just going around shooting certain people. And
Wow.
yeah, that was pretty messed up. But he was paid. So this reporter Paul Palango put out an article with evidence, and they had surveillance footage. He went and got a huge cash sum from a Brinks, like a Brinks, which is like a cash depot, which is like those big trucks that drive around with all the
Yeah.
money. That's a Brinks. So anyway, he went to like one of their depots and got a whole bunch of money from there. As soon as that article came out, this former CSIS girl, well, former CSIS, is there even such a thing? I don't know. It's like, is there a former CIA? No, they're always CIA. They just pretend like they're not. But Jessica Davis, yeah. So she started publishing various articles because she does a thing now where she like publishes stuff about national security, whatever. So she started putting out articles saying, oh, maybe it was a Middle Eastern terror group that paid him or something. It's like that's ridiculous. Like what a ridiculous thing to say. Like Middle Eastern terror groups don't get money from Brinks depots in Canada.
Right.
Like that's not how that works. So, but the fact that she's tried to cover it up is very notable, right? And so that means it's either CSIS or CIA because they both seem to cover up each other's operations. And that's alarming. That's concerning. And that's the kind of thing that seems to be happening in the United States a lot. Like there's all these mass shootings. It's almost certainly because of CIA and whoever else. And it's weird though that like I post things on Quora sometimes about like how the CIA does stuff. And there's these guys that come along, they say, the CIA doesn't operate in the United States. What are you talking about? And yet there's Wikipedia articles saying that they've admitted to doing things, but anyway.
Yeah, Robert Duncan calls these people you're talking about, if you read Project Soulcatcher, psycho bombs.
Psycho bombs.
That's what he says the CIA calls them, psycho bombs. They program them to go these mass shootings.
Yeah, yeah. So in some cases they probably pay them in some cases where it's like a desperate guy or whatever. In other cases they just push their buttons, trigger them.
Mind control, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They do the MK Ultra mind control to get them all like amped up into a state of frenzy and then suggest to them to do certain things, and there you go, right? So that's happening at an alarming rate in the United States, and it has been for decades. And so it looks like they're trying to get that started in Canada, which is nuts. And it makes you wonder, why would a national security group be trying to basically destroy the country, to destroy national security? I'm very concerned about what's going on in the States right now. It looks like you might be headed for civil war with the Donald Trump thing. Like there's, they convicted him, and now nobody trusts the justice system because they convicted him. And it's like, oh, that's going to end badly no matter what happens. So,
Yep.
you know, like, why would they do that? And so I've been studying into what's going on there, what's really happening behind the scenes, and it all goes back to Operation Paperclip. These Nazi indoctrinated, smart scientists, military, political people that were brought over, they were basically like loyal to Hitler and loyal to the Nazi ideology, loyal to the Reich, and basically Mein Kampf, the book that Hitler wrote, describes in detail all the things that they're doing secretly behind the scenes and all the things that are happening. You see the shadows of it in all this stuff that's going on. Like,
And
why
see,
would a national
a
security
lot of
group?
people, I hate to interrupt. A lot of people
Yeah,
don't understand that. They think, oh, just Hitler just killed Jews. No, if you were disabled,
yeah.
deformed, mental
He just
disabled,
picked,
autism, it don't matter. They're killing you
yeah,
back in the
he
day.
just picked the most vulnerable sector of society. It
Yep.
didn't matter if there was Jews. I don't think Hitler himself had any specific grievance about any Jewish person whatsoever. He just identified a group that was vulnerable and that had already sort of like a base of hate directed at it, and he exploited that. He
Yep.
amplified that. He used
Because
that.
he killed
That's
he cleared the mental hospitals out and killed all the mental
yeah.
health people and everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, just the vulnerable people that they could do experiments on and get away with it.
And a lot of
Um,
disabled people are being
So that's
targeted
actually
right
the
now in
Nazi
America.
ideology. The Nazi ideology itself doesn't have anything necessarily to do with Jewish people or with anti-Semitism. Like, you could take Mein Kampf and replace the word Jew with vulnerable person, and it would be identical. And that's
Yep.
exactly what they're doing now. And you know, like, how did this happen, right? Well, it seems pretty obvious. You take all these people, they are involved with CIA and secret organizations, military organizations. What did they do? They got together privately, secretly, on their own, the people that they knew from Germany that were also Nazis, and they discussed privately, secretly, with no records, saying, okay, we need to continue the Reich. What are we going to do? And then they planned it all out, planned the way to create a culture that was going to allow them to carry out their entire plan. And what I've learned about the cultures of the secret intelligence agencies, things that I'm not supposed to know, are that all of the culture there is set up so that they can do things and get away with it. One of the key principles that they all adhere to is called omerta. Basically, it's the mafia code of not telling on a family member, right? And so, like, that basically means that they can do anything they want, no matter how depraved, how unethical, how destructive it is, and none of the people that are their buddies that know about it are allowed to tell on them or to report them or to make any report to just say anything about it to anyone. And so that's a key piece of uh, ideology to indoctrinate people with if you're going to be able to carry out the rest of the Nazi plan.
Yeah, because if you break omerta, you're dead. Because I
Yeah,
read
and
books.
so
I read
they've
about Anthony Gaspipe, Anthony Costello. I've read Roy DeMeo, the Iceman. You know, are you familiar with them? They were mafia
uh
people.
I may have heard of a few of them.
That's how I know about Omerta, the Omerta thing.
Are
Philip
these people
Carlo
that
wrote
carried
some
out
books
like
on it.
mass killings and stuff in secret? Yeah, they were doing something like that around here in Vancouver. I'm in Vancouver, BC. They were doing that at this pig farm. It was Robert Picton's pig farm. And so they were doing that for years. They were just kidnapping girls from a vulnerable area of town called the Downtown East Side, taking them out to the farm, drugging them, raping them, doing horrifying things to them, probably torturing them and murdering them and putting them in a wood chipper in the pig farm and just, like, you know, scattering their body, their whatever all over the place. And yes, it was really horrifying, and they were getting high level officials involved with this, and they were getting police involved with this, and there's a whistleblower, Grant Wakefield, I think was his name, and he tried to disclose what was happening, and they just started targeting him and, you know, trying to discredit him. But it was a whole murder game thing that they were doing. And it was more than just Robert Picton that was involved in this. Everybody knows that. Like, that is common knowledge, but he's the guy that they convicted, and they left it at that, right? Still, there's people that were involved in that still out there. And actually, just recently, Robert Picton got attacked in prison, and he's on life support. He might die, and there's all these news stories coming out saying, geez, if he dies, the truth might die with him, and we know that there are other people that were involved in this.
And
So
that's probably
that's,
why they carried out the attack on him.
yeah, probably probably actually. Like
Keep that
that's the thing
knowledge
that
quiet forever.
that's the thing I've noticed happens. Like when I was in prison, wrongfully convicted, they sent a guy to kill me, and this same guy is a hitman. You can Google him. Jansen Baker is his name, up in Canada, and he is a guy. He was recently, just a few years ago, he was sent to go and kill a family that had ratted on one of their drug houses. He's like works for a drug group or whatever, or some organized crime thing, and so. But the only way he could have got that information was if someone in Ottawa had tipped them off, right? So there's basically someone in Ottawa that works for organized crime, that works for this massive corrupt group that basically controls all the organized crime and causes destruction of society, and they're trying to take over and start up the Reich again, basically.
Right. Do you get heavily stalked like when I was homeless? I know I spent 9 years homeless, and people I would get heavily stalked. Cars.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, they used to
I
do
could
that.
walk a whole mile, and the same car would be the same three cars.
Yep.
Sometimes they would be three cars back to back, and they would be right
I got
around me, bugging me
videos.
like this,
Yeah.
looking at
I
me
have
real
videos of
mean.
things they did.
Yeah.
And it was the stalking. It was like, that's just like whatever. They're idiots.
Are they still
The problem
stalking
was the
you?
sleep deprivation. They would send people to like go and bang on my door in the middle of the night, or to like play blast music directly at my wall. Like it was. I have videos of all that. That's the problem. That's why I made the complaint with the intelligence review agency. But I think they're kind of afraid to do the gang stalking thing to me now, because none of it works. And it tips me off to who they are. And if I'm like bored or in a bad mood, I'll like do psyops on them. Right? Like these, it's not hard. Like they're morons. They're a bunch of idiots. They're getting paid to do things that are unethical acts of terrorism. They don't even realize what they're doing or who they're doing it for. You can tell them a few of the details that like triggers things in their mind that they're like, holy shit, that rings of truth. And then it scares the crap out of them because they're actually committing acts of terrorism, which is a very serious criminal offense, right? So when they find that out and they realize, oh, geez, like they probably don't want to work for that group anymore if they're, reasonable people. And a lot of these people that do this seem to be like just normal everyday people. They're just maybe struggling. They need money. Like the housing crisis here has got everybody uh having difficulties, making ends meet. And so that's part of the plan, of course, is to make it difficult to survive so that people are more susceptible to being paid off to do things.
Yeah. See, I interviewed somebody that's in Edmonton in Canada, and he's homeless right now. Him and his girl, and he's a target. You can watch that interview on my channel, and he's getting stalked. They're doing psyops on him. They're doing remote neural. I think it's all big hive mind neural networks. Because to get a whole airport to stalk me, or get a whole group of
That,
people, I swear
that's
it has to
easy.
be mind control.
No, that's easy. They control all the staff there. That's all that is, right? And like they have direct control over like the high level staff, and then the higher level staff just they manage the other ones and tell them what to do. And most of them at the very bottom, the people who are actually doing the things, they don't know what the
So,
hell's going on. They were just told to do a thing, and they're going and they're mindlessly doing it.
so you
So,
think the
but like it
staff
looks
told? So
like
you think the staff told the passengers on the airplane waiting on plane something bad about me? And
I they have a lot of fake passengers.
oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah, no, like
explains
they
a lot.
send people to on planes, and they were kind of rubbing this in with me sometimes. They target individuals. They know exactly what seat they're in. They can put a person in the seat next to them. They can put a person in the seat behind them. They do that. Like that's easy. That is like that's like a no-brainer, they were doing that, and sometimes they do weird things, like they do supposedly helpful things. Like one time I was flying out to Newfoundland, they sent a guy on who was from Cape Breton, or no, from Victoria, and he had a pizza. And he's like, "Here, you want some pizza?" And it's like, how the hell did you get a hot pizza on an airplane?
Right.
It's like, where did this come from? like this is like it was kind of cool actually because it's like what? How do you like? He has a hot pizza, like it was just in a regular box, like it wasn't a name brand box or anything, and it was a hot pizza, freshly baked, hot. Like where does that come from? Like there's no pizza stores in the airport.
Right.
So
Wow.
like, I don't know where they brought a
So
pizza and they
what do you go through right now as far as targeting?
um okay, so
What
right now it's interesting. This is a very interesting point right now because I had a complaint in progress with the accountability agency NCIRA, and I was giving them all sorts of information. I was recording videos showing what they were doing, sending that to them. They were acknowledging my emails about this. They just sent me a letter saying denying, like, which is obviously a lie. I don't know what the point in that is exactly, but they just sent a letter denying, saying, "Oh, CSIS isn't doing this, so it's not in our jurisdiction," right? But at the exact same time that happened, suddenly all the people that work for CSIS started being nicer to me. Like this is one of their dramatization things, right? Like they had this girl who's in the grocery store, for instance. She was like ignoring me for the last little while. Like whenever I'd be walking by, she'd turn away and be talking to someone else or whatever. And then as soon as I got this letter saying, "Oh, CSIS isn't doing this," now she's like talking to me, being all friendly. Other people in other places that I know work for CSIS, they're like being extra friendly to me and saying, and then the guy that they were sending to like scream, literally was circling the building. And I have a video of this screaming and screaming some guy's name or something. I don't know who this guy's name is supposed to be, but it's probably supposed to be something relevant. And that suddenly stopped happening. Um, and they've been sending like a police car every so often, like as if it's like the police are supposed to be looking at things. I don't know. They do all these weird things that are supposed to trigger a belief in the target that something's happening in a certain way. Really, I know it's all just behind the scenes a script they're doing because they've been doing this for a
Yeah, they
while.
love scripts.
Yeah, they just set up
Yeah.
this script to try and make a person believe a certain thing is happening or whatever, but really it's just what they put in the script. Um, and so yeah, so like, but the with the gang stalking and the SLATs and coming around trying to like they weaponized or they tried to weaponize my personal medical information, which is like really disturbing. Um, but luckily, I none of that stuff was valid anyway, and the stuff that it might be valid, I've been working real hard on finding a cure to post-traumatic stress triggers. So I wrote a book in 2006 called "You May Be Insane and Not Even Know It." So that's got the basic premise to basically my cure for mental health problems, which basically immunizes a person against all the psyops they're doing. And now I'm in the middle of rewriting that book to make it clearer for the public. A lot of the book, the original one, was to do with like the autism condition and what does that mean, and basically it's sort of like an autism supremacist rant of a sort because everyone who reads it they either think they are autistic or they wish they were autistic, right?
Right.
Anyway, that was part of the point, was to like try and say, hey, autistic people are really useful and valid, and they're maybe even better than normal. But I'm rewriting it now, and it'll probably be a useful manual for TIs now that I think of it, because it teaches you how to identify these triggers that are causing problems and correct them and basically delete the emotional content from those memories so that when they get triggered in the future, it doesn't cause you to be stressed out. It doesn't cause you like your heart to race. It doesn't cause anxiety. It doesn't cause psychosis or all the things that they figured out how to do mind control. You can delete that. So I
Wow.
figured out how to delete that. So their psyops are completely useless on me. Every so often I pretend like it's working or something. I don't think they believe it
Right.
anymore.
Because
So like I
because
was
a
pretending for
lot
a
of TIs
while that it
are
was working.
sensitive to triggers. Like, there's times I'll start a video and then I'll scratch my nose and I'll be like, well, I got to start this video right all over again because some people are sensitive to somebody
Right.
scratching their nose. They're that sensitive. So, man, if you could do that, that would be awesome to get people,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I'll let you know when I'm done the rewrite of this book, and I think it's probably going to be really really useful. It's probably going to piss the CIA off pretty hardcore because it's going to immunize people.
like when I was homeless on the streets, for instance, I would get threats, death threats, and then when they would have me in a uh a big state of fear, like
Yeah.
you know, because you're all when they would send me smiley faces. So anytime somebody
Mm,
is messaging me or something and they put that smiley face, I find myself, hey, is this
right.
dude perping me? But I'm learning to see through it. Hey, just because somebody
Mhm.
sends you an emoji don't mean they're
Well, I
perping
know
you.
it's interesting. The smiley face thing was a thing after. Okay, so let me just tell you what happened in 2011. Well, first of all, in 2009, they sent a guy he drove up to me in his car, got out, tried to beat me to death, across the back of my head with a weapon. That failed. Then in 2011, they had a guy drug me while I was unconscious. They put me in a car, crashed the car. I almost died in this car crash. And then the driver took off, and they had a cop go on the stand and lie and say he was the first one on the scene, and I was the only person in the car, which are all lies. There was another person in the car, and there's witnesses who saw that, but they wouldn't let them testify. They wouldn't let me have a lawyer. Anyway, but while I was in the hospital, and I only found this out a couple years later when I was doing freedom of information requests to try and find out what actually happened. But while I was in the hospital, they had a guy come to the hospital, and he was asking questions about me and asking the staff where I was and stuff, and then they wouldn't tell him, and so he gave him a note to give to me, and the note said karma with a happy face, which is like really, really creepy.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, like
like they do stuff like
every
that.
time I'd be having a horrible day homeless, I'd get a big line full of happy faces, about 10 of them in a row. Like, and then I'd be like, man, in a text message from a text now number. And I'm like, really? So I get triggered by happy faces.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so
big time.
there are ways that you can deal with that. Actually, I can just tell you the basic concept. It's so what you need to do is you need to purposely trigger those things, but you need to do it in a very calm, relaxed environment when your mind and your body are very calm and relaxed. So you trigger those things on purpose a little bit, and then you meditate, right? Do you ever do meditation, just like breathing and calming yourself and focusing yourself? You can get really good at that to the point where you can actually activate your parasympathetic nervous system, and you can feel tingles of calm running down your whole body, right? So if
Yeah,
you
they say
purposely,
that that breaks remote neural monitoring, what you're talking about. In your nose, out your
yeah,
mouth, real slow, that it breaks remote neural monitoring
yeah,
sometimes.
well, it calms you down, which is what you need to do. And so if you purposely trigger these things that are causing you stress, it brings up the memory from your hippocampus, which is where all your memories are stored in your mind. And then part of that memory is a body state, like a stressed out body state. So you're remembering the stressed out body state, and it
Yeah.
causes your body to enter that state a little bit. But if you're already in a calm state, and then when your body goes into that state of stress, if you calm yourself down right away and you focus on that memory, it's stored in your working memory, and then eventually after a few seconds it stores back into your long-term memory. But when it stores back, it's a calmer. And so when the next time it's triggered, it comes out, but it's not it's got more calm to it, right? And so you just keep re-triggering it, and it gets calmer and calmer and calmer. And eventually, when you re-trigger that memory, when you see those happy faces, you remember it, you remember the information, but you don't feel the stress.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be amazing.
It takes a while, right? Like rest assured, it takes a long time to restore all those memories. But if you work at it and you keep at it, the more it gets triggered, the better it is. So all these gang stalkers that are triggering things are actually helping, right? They're helping because they're finding these little triggers, and then you can delete the trigger when it's found. So
Well, they're
once you
helping.
realize that.
Well, they're helping you because you know how to beat it.
Exactly.
Now, some
And
people
they're going to be helping
torture.
everybody because I'm going to publish this, and everyone's going to have access to the
Yeah,
information.
that makes a lot of sense what you just said. So,
Yeah. So
wow.
I'm going to write a book with detailed information about, and I already have a book out there that describes some of that, but it doesn't describe the whole picture. And it's funny where I discovered the rest of the picture. It's an interesting thing. Do you know, you probably heard of L. Ron Hubbard?
Yes,
Yeah.
Scientology. Yeah.
What do you think of that guy?
Uh, well, I really don't know too much about it. I've heard about him, and I've ran across a couple of his books, and I want to say I read one of them.
You want to say?
I think he was his books had a lot of weird stuff in it.
Yeah,
But
some of them
but
had
he was
weird stuff.
very smart. He was high. I mean,
He
he
was
was a
very
high
smart.
IQ dude.
And what he was actually doing was he was researching the human mind to come up with a science of mental health. And he's been extremely discredited lately. And the reason is he found the cure to post-traumatic stress. He found the cure to mental illnesses. And that cure is basically what I just described in a slightly different format. And that would be a problem because that immunizes people against the CIA's primary psychological weapon.
Right.
So they've
Wow.
been working on hard to discredit him, because if people were to find out that stuff. But like the way he wrote his book, I read his first book. I actually have a certificate. Can you hand me the certificate there?
There
I
was a
actually
book he wrote where it was
reading.
like these women with women and men. It was just weird. It was like I could have swore I can't think of the name of the book.
So I
Dying.
completed this course, and
Wow.
yeah, it's basically it's a complicated thing. Like the way he wrote the book, he wrote it for the level of like PhD students. So it's like really hard to understand. It's got a lot of validity, but like the average person, there's no way they're gonna get it. There's no way they're gonna understand it. I mean, I'm a Mensa member. I have a university degree. I understand these things. I've been researching the human mind for a long time, so I understand it all. And I've basically digested the information, and I can translate it to layman's terms. Um, and Yeah, so that's what I'm work one of the things I'm working on right now is that. Um, but
Are
yeah,
you
they've
able
been
to
working
hold a
on
job?
discrediting. What's that?
Do you have a job? Are you able to hold a job?
Well, when I first started getting targeted and then they took me political prisoner, I was running my own business. And so I'm still doing that. All my previous stuff got destroyed pretty much. I found the governmentexpenses.ca site and put it back up. So it's up, but it's got like data from 2011. And right now on the front of business, I'm working on a site called Companionation, which is a site to help people meet companions. And there's three key features. One is that every member of the site is guaranteed by another member to be a real person who's really in your city, so no scammers. Another feature is their ratings and reviews, so you can have testimonials so that people can see that you're a nice guy or whatever, and you basically know who you're meeting before you meet them. And the third part is counseling, because the online culture is completely messed up. Like people got cancel culture. That's really hard to meet people. They have difficulties. Anyway,
A
so
lot
there's
of
going to be
bots too.
counselors. There's a lot of what?
A lot of bots and
Bots,
trolls.
yeah.
Stuff that's
Well,
not even
yeah, all the
real.
bots will be gone. But like just the people like that are having difficulties, there'll be counseling to help them learn how to be more sociable. And it'll be helping TIs because a lot of TIs get in this pattern of like being scared to go out and meet people because they're like, oh my God, that could be like one of the gang stalkers or whatever. And
Oh yeah, I've
so
been there.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, right?
And then you got some people like I've heard stories like these people get on these websites and dating sites and they talk to this girl or this boy for a year and the whole time there's some AI bot that's not even real, but the bot's sending pictures and everything and then it's
Oh
time to
yeah.
meet and the whole
Yep.
time it wasn't real and they paid the
Yeah.
site to talk
Yeah,
to a
there's
bot for a year
complicated bots
basically.
now. And sometimes it's just like a scammer that's doing in like
Yeah,
Nigeria or Africa or
catfishing and
something.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you see like I've seen Dr. Phil episodes where like someone got scammed for thousands of dollars and stuff, or they had their heart broken because they
Well,
were
who do
looking
you
for
think's
alternatives.
behind the targeting?
Who's behind it?
Do you think it's the Five Eyes?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
what I
Well,
think.
but like the thing is, here's the thing. There's multiple layers of that.
Because you can
Um,
go, I know people in China that's targeted. And China's not a part of the Five
there's
Eyes,
Five
are they?
Eyes in China.
There is?
They
Okay.
just oh yeah, there were just two Canadian political prisoners that worked for CSIS in China. They got
Wow.
caught, and they're yeah. And actually, that thing with the Wuhan province, whatever the Uyghur, the Xinjiao, I don't even know how to say it, but they had a whole province locked down basically. And there's all this propaganda on the internet about why that
Yeah, you
is.
can't. Hey, one thing,
They're
don't
saying,
talk about because they'll kick. You know what I'm saying? You can't talk about the. You see what I'm saying?
The vaccine, what?
Yeah, can't say
No,
that word on YouTube.
yeah, anyway, it's nothing to do with that.
Oh, okay.
But people are accusing China of doing a genocide, which is ridiculous. Like under no, like there's nothing to do with genocide there. But what had actually happened, and this is China's official position, and this shows you how corrupt all the Western media is. No Western media mentioned China's official position about what's really going on there. If they were unbiased reporting, they would have to say, well, China says this is happening and the US says this is happening. They didn't say that. They just said, oh, the US says this is happening. Okay, but what China says is that the CIA had been taking people out of this province and bringing them to Afghanistan, um, indoctrinating them with terrorist ideology, teaching them terrorist guerrilla war tactics, then putting them back in China to go and spread that ideology and go and do bombings. And they bombed some buses during the Olympics and stuff like this. And so China says, yeah, the United States has been sending CIA to basically abduct people, indoctrinate them, and send them back and do terrorist activity. And so they got caught, and they had to like somehow correct all this messed up ideology that the CIA had put into people's heads. So they basically put them in schools to teach them not to be terrorists. And so
Wow.
that's China's position about what's happening. And I think that's probably a lot closer to reality.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
that's
just like people don't
exactly
even
like the
know
kind
that.
of thing that the
People don't
CIA
even
would do.
realize that Medvedev just warned the United States to or just warned NATO to stop before nuclear war happens. And NATO keeps sending.
I send broadcast messages to NATO every so often and tell them, what's going on and try and implore them to like deal with this. In fact, I just recently
Russia will be
sent a
the first
letter.
one to fire a nuke. I'm just really scared it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't
Soon.
think Russia's a concern anymore, but
You
there
don't?
are bigger concerns. I just sent a letter about my concerns with corruption in Canada to King Charles. Right now, guess what response that got? I thought I'd get no response, right? But no,
Wow. You got
actually something happened.
you're brave.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I just sent a letter to the king. I said, listen, here's the problems that I'm finding in Canada. I thought maybe the king would be concerned that something is rotten in Canada, to use the old saying, something's rotten in Denmark, right? But so anyway, there was a response. I was surprised. I found out through my doctor, right? My doctor, my family doctor. I was in the doctor's office, and he's like, "Oh, are you writing a letter or something?" I'm like, "I don't know. I write various letters." It's like he shows me this paper. It's from some UK security service, some threat assessment service, right? Saying basically that they got my letter to the king. I guess they intercepted. They intercept all the mail, whatever. Uh, and they looked into my file. They saw where my doctor was. They saw like they basically they have access to my personal information. And they said, oh, basically what they were trying to do was they were trying to convince my doctor that I'm crazy and should be drugged.
Wow.
Yeah. So this was a slight problem, right? I was like, no. That's not how that works, right? So I put in a complaint. I said, listen, the doctor is required to follow ethical obligations. They're required to provide me with proper health care and without foreign interference involved, right? Because this was foreign interference. Anyway, so I got that all sorted out. I met with the manager at the doctor's office. He's like, yes, absolutely. We are required to provide you with proper health care. And we're, basically they're ignoring the UK security service. But nevertheless, my doctor was shocked, right? He's like, "Oh my God, what is this? Like this is," and I'm like, "Listen, dude, I understand. This is normal for me, but I'm pretty sure this is probably the only time in your entire career that you're going to be getting a letter from the king about a patient."
Right.
Yeah.
Could you explain your shirt? A lot of
Yeah, Screw
people.
Zero,
I know, but a
Canada's
lot of people.
accountability guy. This
Could you
this
explain
logo
what?
was actually generated by AI. Yeah, this is a Chat GPT generated logo. It's got a Canada flag in the
Uh-huh.
background, like a Canadian maple leaf. It's got kind of like an eyeball, which is sort of like the Illuminati eye, and the Illuminati stands for like the original Illuminati was just a group of people that were trying to hold the government accountable and make sure they weren't being corrupt and stuff like that. And
But
it
this done
basically
got
means
polluted
someone's
and
watching.
turned bad.
What's that?
I said, this done got polluted and turned bad, wouldn't you think?
Well, there's propaganda about it.
Yeah.
I
What I'm
mean,
saying is, some of my viewers might look and say, like, look, he's got the all seeing eye on his shirt.
well,
You never know what, I just
yeah,
wanted you
I
to
mean,
explain
people
that
can
way
jump
they
to
know what.
whatever conclusions they want, right? You can assume anything you want, but ask, right? Okay, so the point is, this signifies that someone is watching the people that are doing these things to the TIs. I'm watching. Drew Zero is watching. I'm Canada's accountability guy. So there's accountability for the people that are doing stuff to us TIs. That's
I
what
hope
that
so.
means.
I
Yeah,
hope
well,
so.
there is.
I want to count, man, because they've. I used to be the life of a party. Now I'm agoraphobic. Can't leave my house because I get stalked like Paris Hilton leaving her house. Like paparazzi follows me everywhere. They
Yeah,
really like
yeah, and
screwed my
they're
life
kind of
up.
like the paparazzi, aren't they? Right? Because
Yeah,
they use their cameras to like their phones to like take pictures of you and videos and stuff, and they do stupid things like that, and
psyops.
they try and
Yeah,
make it obvious too, right? Like they try and really rub it in just to bother you. So you kind of have to become immune to stuff like that, which is hard, right? It's
yeah. I
difficult.
mean, I haven't left my house since November of 2022. Huh.
Really?
Yeah, I'm agoraphobic. Like I know there's a crowd going to follow me. I know that I've escaped real kidnapping attempts, and so being to that, I really don't even want to go through that stress anymore. And then I don't want to lash out on the wrong person and hurt them. And then on
Yeah.
top of that, I have like my throat closes up, and if I step outside that door and start get in the car and start
Mm.
driving down the road, I've tried it before, and then my throat starts closing up. I
Yeah.
start getting really bad, stressed out, and I'll just say, "Look, Holly, you got to turn around. Take me back now. I'm begging you. Turn around.
Right.
Turn around."
Yeah. So you gotta, what you need to do is basically use the techniques that are in my book to uh, gradually acclimatize yourself to that. And so this is where my technique I think is better than L. Ron Hubbard. I mean, L. Ron Hubbard came up with this really fancy technique to basically do auditing and go deep down into your subconscious memory and like find the most difficult earliest memory possible and deal with that first, right? And so that was impossible for a single person to do. So yet for his method, you have to have two people, and it's like really difficult and complicated and intense. With my method, you start at the top, the most recent problematic memory, which is a lot less traumatic usually, and you just gradually acclimatize yourself to it. And you can so you don't completely lose control, right? Like when you're just like out in the car and you're like you are like you don't have control over yourself anymore, right? Like you're so stressed out, you can't deal with it no matter what. So that's never going to work. That's just
Yeah,
going
and
to
I
get
got a whole,
you
I get
worse.
Ativan supposed to help. We'll take you a couple Ativan before you go out. I've tried that. No. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
my
that's pretty bad. So what you need to do is like gradually ease yourself into it. Like go to the door, maybe open the door, and then as soon as you start feeling the stress, just like calm yourself down, focus on it, focus on what's happening right there and then, and focus on calming yourself. You need to get really, really good at going from like a state of extreme stress to extreme calm instantly within seconds. It's possible to learn how to do that, and basically the technique is to to create calmness triggers. So what you want to do is you want to put yourself in the most calm state you can. So you want to find a dark room, like if darkness is calming too, maybe it's not, but whatever's calm, like you basically like pleasant sounds or quiet or pleasantness. Like when you feel the most calm that you possibly can, focus on either a mantra, like a saying that you have to yourself, or like a symbolism or imagery, or something that you can call up in your mind at any moment. And so if so you link in that state of calm to this symbol that's in your mind, right? So then when you go somewhere else and you're like stressed out, you think of that symbol, boom, and then the calm comes in with it. And so you need to be able to do that. And once you can do that, then you can go and put yourself into stressful situations, bring yourself to a state of calm very quickly by focusing on your mantra, and then focus on that situation, restore it in your memory as a calm memory. Then next time you go to the door, you instantly feel calm again instead of
Right.
feeling the stress. And so, and then you just got to gradually work your way into like going outside the door, going even further and further and further. And once you figure out the basic technique, you can take it all the way and delete all your triggers, delete all your stresses.
So the way you see it is one big mind psyop that traumatizes your mind, trauma-based mind control, basically.
Yeah.
Do you experience V2K? Like I
Um,
experience it where my wife, it'll be my wife's voice and she'll be like,
right.
yeah,
I
they,
do
yeah, they,
understand it. I don't get that. Like I understand exactly what you're talking about.
like,
Um,
listen, for instance, when I first started hearing it, I was in a hotel. I went to 5 different hotels, and every time they would do this scene where I'm checking in, I give them my debit card, and then they go get a phone call right in the middle checking me in, and boom, they come back. Oh, we can't check you in. We're full for the night. Sorry. You can go to the next motel. Then every motel, so the last motel I walk out of, I hear my ex-wife's voice, who was my handler, honeypot, whatever, and she's talking to somebody, and she's like, look, he can't even get in a hotel. He don't even know what to do. He said
right.
he's freaking out.
Yeah.
So I start looking in all the cars. She's nowhere. Come to find out, she's miles away. So, they're,
Right.
yeah.
So
So
that's an extreme form of stress happening in your mind, and you can
you don't
actually.
believe in V2K.
I do. No, I do believe in V2K. But it's amplifies an existing stress. Like the human mind has these survival mechanisms that include stuff like what you're describing, but also you can trigger that externally. And so the V2K thing, I guess, there's various versions of it that I've heard of. The simplest is just like a directional speaker,
It's
like like a megaphone that goes
neuro-linguistic
directly.
programming.
It's what?
Well, I call it neuro-linguistic programming or chatterbots. Like they
Well,
make you hear
NLP is
people's
actually a
voices.
NLP is a technique in cognitive behavioral therapy where you talk to yourself and you use self-talk to basically instill certain states of mind or like enhance certain abilities. That's one of the things that's in my book actually is you can when you're meditating, you can like basically say I am a powerhouse of knowledge of intelligence or something and just repeat that and
But you can't
visualize
say
it.
that stress causes the voices, and because some people
No,
hear it
well, the voices cause the
24/7.
stress, and the stress causes the voices, and then and then it's like it just builds and builds,
Because
right?
some
It's
people hear it all day,
yep. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
and there's patents for the machines that they can actually pump voices into people's heads
Yeah,
and make them
yeah,
hear stuff.
yeah. No, I've seen some of that.
So I think that they were sitting in the park. I think that they did something that day, that had that whole conversation played out about the motel, and that because I was looking everywhere, I was like, because it sounded like it was coming from one direction, and then I jumped the swimming pool fence. I'm looking, I can't see it nowhere. They're laughing. He can't get in the hotel. He's freaking out,
Right,
and I'm like, that's my wife. I'm
right,
looking everywhere.
right. Yeah,
Kind
that's
of
what
like
I
what I
referred
told you
to.
about the dude that said, "Hey, we're behind the bushes. Come see us." And I went behind the bushes. Nobody was there. And then they said, "Ha
Yeah,
ha." You know, you're
yeah,
saying
that's
that
what
was
I'm
an
referring
external
to as
stressor?
I call that escape imbalance. There's three primary imbalances in the human mind. Escape imbalance is the one that triggers when you're in a potentially life-threatening situation that you can do nothing about other than wait, right? And so it causes weird phenomena like that. Probably a simpler way to understand what's happening is to look at the control imbalance. Control imbalance is when you're in a fight or flight situation, you have to control the situation or you might potentially die, right? These are all survival instincts in the human mind and body. So the fight or flight is something that everybody understands, really straightforward, no confusing anything there. Fight or flight is a mind and body reaction that has like stimulatory hormones like adrenaline and noradrenaline and dopamine, all those really excitatory neurotransmitters and hormones in your body are just amped up and going, ready to put your body into action, like whether you need to fight or whether you need to run, whatever, right? And so that's a hormonal and a mental reaction. Now you can trigger that externally by causing certain stresses, and some of these microwave weapons do that, right? So that's the whole point, is that some of these microwave weapons, it targets the mind and the body, and it increases the level of stress, increases the fight or flight instinct, and then once you start doing that, some people get stuck in that, right? Because they have feedback loop. They say, "Oh my God, I need to worry about." And I used to get that all the time. I would get full-blown panic attacks because I would feel a weird sensation in my body, and then I'd be like, "Oh my God, I'm dying," and like just my self-talk would cause it to amplify, and it would get completely out of control, and I'd end up in the hospital thinking I was dying, and all it was just stress in my body that I was causing to be amplified.
So in your opinion, these people, CIA, Five Eyes or whatever, when they're torturing us, they're they're tricking our brain into torturing ourselves, basically.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly it. And that's why it doesn't work on me anymore, because I'm aware of that. And I have control over this organism right here, this
Now
mind
the
and this.
microwave weapons is one you got people getting burned alive. I
Yeah, that's a
totally
bigger
like they had
problem.
trained me. We had an appointment. Everybody watching, we had an appointment at 11, and I had told him that a week ago. I had wrote it down and everything. Like I just happened to check Messenger this morning, and I'm late. And he's like, "Dude." So I'm like, "Man, I had totally been wiped from my memory. I had a bad morning. I got hit. Matter of fact, I laid down all morning. I was nauseated. My head was heating up. I was getting shocks to the back of my head. So I just happened to check Messenger because I was snapping out of it, being hit, and boom, I seen your mess. I'm glad I did because I felt so bad making you wait, but it had
Oh
totally
no,
been
I,
wiped from
I
my
needed to
memory.
wake up anyway. It's early in the morning. It was
Yeah,
only like,
totally wiped from my memory. Wow.
yeah. No, that was good actually, because it gave me a chance to wake up and stuff. But yeah, like the burning, like those microwave weapons that cause actual burns, like you can uh
My girlfriend
there's
gets them, and she's got plenty of
delete
pictures.
you can delete the psychological trauma parts that are causing problems, but you can't delete burns on your skin.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, she
yeah,
gets
that's the
burnt
problem.
big time.
Like some of these things need to be like full blown illegal, like chemical weapons use and nuclear weapons and burn like microwave weapons and sleep deprivation. Like that causes like you can't just sort of think your way out of someone smashing the wall and stopping you from sleeping. You can't just somehow stop that from happening and let your body ignore being literally physically shaken. Like when they
Right.
when they shake the when they like drop bowling ball on the ceiling or something like that, and it shakes the whole building. Yeah, so some
I
of these
can't
things are.
imagine what they went through. Well, I can because we go through it, and I'm so blacklisted. Like there's churches won't help me, homeless shelters won't. One time I did this thing at Lynette Castle, rest in peace. She was a TI. She got murdered. They found her cut up in a box. She kept posting her gang stalkers pictures online on Facebook, and then boom, he gets charged with her murder, and they find him anyway. So one day we did this trick. I said, "Watch this, Lynette. I'm going to go to this church, and they're going to turn me down for food. Then I'm going to go hide in bushes." We were on FaceTime, and I said, "Then I'm going to show you." When I hide in the bushes, 15 minutes later, there's going to be a whole line of people come to this church and get food. So they turned me down. Boom. We don't serve food. That book's long. We ain't served food in years. We don't give nobody nothing. So I was like, okay, have a nice day. So I went and walked about 15 minutes. I'm sitting there with her on FaceTime. Boom, a whole line of people come to the church. They start handing food bags out.
Yeah, they do that. They did
Yeah,
that to me in
blacklisted,
Newfoundland
man.
when
I hate the
I was
blacklisting.
I was homeless out in Newfoundland, and what they were doing, there was a big lineup for this homeless shelter, and so I'd be waiting in the line. I'd get to the front of the line, and they'd say, "Oh, we can't have you in the homeless shelter. You have to call this main line or whatever." And I'd try calling the line, and it wouldn't work. And so they wouldn't even let me in the door because it was winter and it was freezing cold. But what they'd had a whole bunch of people. They were all fake people, basically. They were going to this homeless shelter. There was only one or two real people that were actually homeless, and I was one of them. Anyway, so one of the people that was going, he'd say, "Oh, I'm just gonna go sleep at my house tonight, so he can have my spot." Right? He'd tell that to the staff there, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, well, we still can't let you in." So this guy would leave, go to sleep at his house because like he's a fake homeless person,
Yeah.
and then I'd say, "Well, what's the problem?" Like they'd say, "Well, we have lots of space. There's all kinds of space in here, but you're just not allowed in here."
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
been there, done that many a times.
And it's supposed to like cause some sort of stress or trauma. Anyway, I ended up in the hospital because of it. Now there's hospital records. And what the interesting thing that happened in the hospital, it gave me some more evidence about them. They had pre-set up a plan to have me locked in a what they call the short stay unit, which is actually a mental health involuntary commitment unit. And they already had they were going to diagnose me with multiple personality disorder, like just from nowhere. Like, so I have medical records now that show that they didn't even talk to me, and they just said, "Oh yeah, he has multiple personalities." Like, this is such a rare, hard to diagnosis. How do you do that? Diagnose a person that you've never even met. You know,
Yes,
they
listen to
really do
this.
plan.
In
But
Texas, they picked me up.
fortunately, fortunately, like the police are not on their side there, right? The Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, constabulatory, the Newfoundland police, they know about this, right? Like, they basically they gave me the heads up. The police came to the homeless shelter when I was like sitting there freezing half to death, and they let me sit in the back of their car for a while, and they actually called the mental health assessment unit, and the officer sat on the phone there, so there's a third party listening, right? So they couldn't make up any stories and say and lie and say that I had said certain things or didn't say certain things. So they sat there and they listened, right? And they even advised me. They said, listen, like, you could stay in the short term, but you don't want to go down that road, right? They said you don't want to do that. So he sat there and he listened to them as they were like checking to see if I was a danger to myself or someone, which I wasn't. um, if that cop hadn't been sitting there listening to him, though, who knows what they would have said, right? They probably would have had me committed, and they already had their plan on how they were going to do that. So, not all the police are bad in places. There are
Right.
some corrupt cops, though. Like, you have to be careful, because out in Halifax, I don't know if there's still a problem like this, but they had some corrupt cops that were working for whoever it is, the CIA, CSIS, the people, basically the Nazis that are running the show behind the scenes. And so they had some cops that would be like targeting a person, and I mean, that's not good for the society. That's not good for the police organization, because if they get caught doing that, like, it's a big hoopla. So most of the police organizations, they probably don't want officers like that are corrupt, because this guy was like stealing stuff from the property room and everything.
Listen what
But
they did to me. They picked me up in Texas. I was walking down the road. The cop comes, says, "You're coming with us," handcuffs me. Boom, he takes me and he drops me off at this mental health facility, right? So I'm waiting in the front of the mental health facility, and then they take me back. I didn't talk to nobody. They just take me back, and I stay in this mental ward for 3 days around people. Didn't talk to nobody, signed no papers or nothing. So 3 days later, I'm just there. You know what I'm saying? I'm not getting my blood pressure checked. They're not giving me medicine. I'm just there for 3 days. And I'm calling my family like, look, they got me in here. I'm not talking to nobody. I haven't filled out paperwork, talked to one person. Then they come, they said, Mr. Atkins, it's time to go. I said, what do you mean? They handed me a paper that said diagnosis schizophrenic. And then they said, we're giving you a cab to a homeless shelter. Here's your diagnosis. Have a nice day. They put me out my stuff and it said schizophrenia. I didn't talk to nobody.
yeah, no, they do that. They targeted individuals, and this is a common theme, especially on the internet when people start talking about it. They send a lot of military guys, actually, to go and say, "Oh, there's no such thing as a gang stalker." A gang stalk, if you believe in gang stalkers, that's a symptom of paranoid schizophrenia, and you should go check yourself into a mental institution. It's like, like, what are you even talking about? Like these military guys are outing themselves as being a part of the problem, because how are they like just going and saying, oh, this harassment that you're experiencing isn't real, you're just crazy. Like, that's really, like, under any circumstance that's inappropriate, but under this circumstance where it's a known thing that the counterterrorism organizations do these operations, these guys are just basically admitting that they're a part of what's happening.
Right. You
Yeah. And so anyway, so like I was saying, there's multiple levels. It is the Five Eyes, right? But the Five Eyes is supposed to be targeting people who are a threat to national security. What they're actually doing, though, is they're basically carrying out the Nazi ideology and targeting people that are vulnerable. They're doing mind control experiments. They're targeting, in my case, political activists. Like, created a very useful of one of the most important, Maclean's magazine said, contributions to the political process. and they're just targeting me like I'm some sort of terrorist or something. Like that's ridiculous. That's like targeting a person who is a political activist is an act of terrorism, in fact, because that makes people afraid to be politically active. And
Right.
that's literally what terrorism does. Is it terrorizes the public into being afraid to engage in society in the way that democracy says is the appropriate way to engage.
We have about 15 minutes left. Is there anything you want to talk about
Um, any
that you,
questions? Like I got probably a
uh,
lot more answers than you have
has this
questions.
affected? Yeah, I mean, you basically answered my questions. So you don't experience microwave weapons. Did you experience smear campaigns?
Oh yeah,
And isol
absolutely.
like, did your friends just stop talking to you and you just get
Yep.
isolated one day?
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
There was a whole bunch of news articles put out saying after this car crash happened that I had nothing to do with it, other than I was the passenger, I was the victim of the incident. They started putting out articles saying, "Oh, Drew did this car crash, and he's like a really bad person," and it stirred up such hate that people were posting comments in it saying like, "Oh, this guy." He doesn't deserve a life sentence. He deserves a death sentence.
Wow. So they did the whole paper smear
Well,
campaign
they
on
had
you.
to, right? Because all these articles saying that I was a really credible political activist, they had to somehow erase that. They haven't erased
Oh,
it. They
yeah.
haven't erased it, but they tried their best, right?
So
Like,
all your friends and stuff you just found just totally left you, huh?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What about
And
your family? Do you have
my
any
parents
family?
as well. My parents were never really all that supportive, unfortunately. But yeah, that also happened.
I mean, they should be proud. They got a kid that's got an IQ out of this world. You'd think they'd
Yeah,
be
well,
proud. You know what I'm
my
saying?
mother has a lot of psychological issues of her own, and
Oh, okay.
I imagine they've probably been targeting her as well. I don't
Yeah.
know what they've been doing to her, but she's probably gotten worse. Yeah, it's just complicated and toxic, and sometimes I just have to, step back just from my own well-being because it's not really helpful to, you know, go and try and engage yourself with a toxic relationship, especially when I'm already dealing with so much stresses and difficulties.
Yeah, because I had a family member say, David, I said, well, look at these YouTube videos with all these target individuals. Will you at least open your mind? I don't want to hear it. Don't show me nothing. If you play it, I'll leave the room. And I'm like, dude, how close minded could you be? And that's my own family. They won't open their eyes. I mean, you got all these people saying the same things happening to them, and you're going to say it's some kind of false delusion. I mean, what is
Yeah,
it?
well, they
What is it?
target the people
What is
around
it?
you
The
as
TI
well.
virus, and everybody who gets it just starts thinking people are. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
like there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens that you would have no knowledge of, where they're like basically suggesting to the people that hang out with you that suggesting that you're crazy, suggesting that things that they're doing to you are the kinds of things that a crazy person would talk about. Do like they're planting all this stuff, all these seeds to destroy your personal relationships.
Yeah, that
And these
must have been
people,
hard though, as an activist, to just get your. I mean, that's kind of like Trump. You know, that whole thing with Trump was set up. That Stormy Daniels thing, that's a classic setup. I mean, don't you
yeah,
agree?
that's
They told her, go set him up, seduce him, so we can use it later on down the line. Basic
right.
facts. And I and
Yeah.
I when I talk about Trump, I don't. I leave my politics at the door. I'm not going to tell you who I'm for and who I'm not for because I don't get into that. But you know what I'm saying? That was a classic setup for him as a politician. Oh, let's send a porn star to seduce Trump, and then if we need it down the line, we can use it. And they used it, and they
Right.
won.
Right. Well, what I
They do
think's
that to
going on
so
here
many
is
people
that
behind the scenes.
the people, yeah, the Nazis that are behind the intelligence agencies that are behind all this propaganda and stuff, I think they're actually trying to make Trump be the cause, the blame, give the blame for a civil war. But I think they're actually trying to cause the civil war, and
But you
like
know what I found? I found a video on Telegram of Paula Jones, Bill Clinton. You know, Bill Clinton paid Paula Jones $850,000 check, and it was on national TV
yeah, sure,
to give Paula Jones her what is it? What was it? Her reputation back, to free her of any bad reputation caused. So it's all right for Bill Clinton to do it, but it's not all right for, so I don't get into politics. It's just, I just think that was really wrong how they do it.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why no one's going to trust the justice system now.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I
definitely.
mean, that's a big problem.
Has
Obviously,
this
the
affected your health
confidence-
any? Well, see, you're not getting hit with weapons and stuff, but I mean, has it affected your health?
Yeah, of course. Like I have to work even harder than I normally do to maintain my mental health, my physical health. Like it's, if I let myself get out of whack, then it gets worse and it's harder. So I try to stay as top shape of health as I can because it's easier to stay healthier if
Do
you're
you use
already
any
healthy.
supplements or anything? Any supplements or anything that you
Like
got?
multivitamins are useful. Magnesium I find is good. Magnesium it
Yeah, I got liquid
reduces stress.
magnesium. I use it
Yeah.
before I go to bed. It helps me sleep. Then I'm also using zeolite. It's a heavy metal detox. Actually comes from lava. They actually use zeolite to cover Chernobyl and the Fukushima. They spread it everywhere because it saturates all the heavy metals and radiation. Oh, I've been trying that, and I'm feeling a little good though. I'm feeling real good since I've done it. But like I said, the last 2 days I've had very bad episodes with fatigue and shocks to the brain, and then I get V2K constantly. So like they've really been messing my health up. Um, I'm glad that I started feeling better though. I put a lemon in a blender, drank some lemon water, but that was all in my head that was the reason they stopped. They just stopped hitting me. The lemon had nothing to do with it. It just, So anyway, so then I looked at my thing and saw your thing. But you would think though, you got a high IQ, you should be able to generate a lot of money somehow, huh?
You
Or
would think,
they
except
sabotage that though, don't they?
I have a whole country attacking me. In fact, I have
Yeah.
two countries, more than two countries probably, the whole Five Eyes.
So
Because there's
everywhere you
sometimes,
go, you're basically known, right? It's from that
well,
newspaper smear campaign.
no, I mean that's not really like that was 2011, right? So
Oh,
that's not even there anymore. Um, but yeah, no, I'm not known places that I go other than by like
gang stalkers and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
exactly, right? Like and even then they don't even know me. A lot of them don't even realize who they're targeting. I know more than they do, but what they're doing, they're just told to go a certain place and do a certain thing, right? So they don't even understand what's going on in most cases. Some of them know me, obviously, and I mean I talk to a bunch of them, and sometimes I don't know. Sometimes they realize that I know who they are, what they are. Mostly they don't, though. And then it's always surprise. It's always funny to see when they realize, oh my God, he knows, and then they like get really nervous, right?
Yeah, I went and confronted a couple of my gang stalkers. One time when I was at the airport, I walked up to one of my gang stalkers. I said, "You know what? I respect you." And I said, "You want to know why?" And he said, "Why?" I said, "Because at least when you stalk me, you look me in the eye." I said, "Most of them look down. Most of them look at the ground when they're stalking." I said, "At least you look me in
What
my
do you
eye."
say to that?
He just freaked. He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "We both know what you're talking
Yeah,
about."
yeah.
I
Then
looked
they
him
do
in the
the
eye and
playing
walked
dumb
off.
thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's they've been doing this game every so often where they send someone to talk to me about stuff, and then they get me talking about things. I say, oh, do you know what the CIA is? And they're like, no, I don't know what that is. It's just
Who
like,
don't know
okay,
what to say?
one of these, eh? It's like, yeah.
So I was going to ask about shielding, but you said that what advice would you give the other TIs?
Um. Okay, so one of the most important things is you have to understand that the people that are causing these problems are only human. Okay. So that means they're vulnerable. That means they're not all powerful. They're not godlike entities that have total control over you. Okay. They're only human. And that's not very much. Okay. So you have the ability to maintain control over your own self, your mind, your body. It can be difficult. When you get way off the rails, like it can be so hard to get back. It can take years to get back to a point of stability, but it is possible. It is possible. Meditation is absolutely vital. Every single day, you need to develop meditation to bring yourself into a state of calm, a state of focus, a state of the
You're
ability to
talking about the in your
withstand
nose, out
stressors.
your mouth breathing techniques. Like
Yeah, breathing techniques,
that's been going around a lot
self-talk.
that helps.
Pay attention to your self-talk. Tell yourself positive things. Tell yourself, yes, I am good, I am fine, I can overcome this, I can withstand this, I am capable, I'm a good person, I'm a reasonable person, like tell yourself all the positive things that you need, especially if you're hearing things that are like negative. You can just say, no, that's not accurate. Here's what's accurate, because you have control over your own self and your own belief about yourself. The mantra of my book, the motto, the tagline was, whatever you believe about yourself is true. So you can control your own beliefs about yourself. No matter, like, there could be 7 billion people on the planet who all just steadfastly have a certain belief about you, but they don't get to decide what you believe about yourself and therefore is true about yourself. So you get to decide. So like literally this has been useful for me because there's been like countless people that believed things about me and I just said, no, I am the one who gets to decide what I believe about me, and that is what's true. So that's
All
a
right.
crucial thing. And I'm going to be rewriting my book that describes all that, and that'll probably be very useful. I should probably get going on that in light of our discussion here, because that'll be very helpful to a lot of people. But that's a crucial thing to overcoming the psyops, which is the main part of the problem here, right? Like they're coming around, they know how to manipulate people's minds and get their own minds to just go berserk and do all sorts of weird, bizarre things that human minds are known to be able to do. But
And
you have the ability to overcome it.
I got one more question. How do you think this ends? This program, does it end? How do you think that? What's
Yeah.
I asked
Yes.
every TI this as the last question.
Yeah. Okay. So what happens is, the public, generally speaking, is not going to have to know about a lot of the stuff, and that's probably for the best. Like your average person, it causes damage for them to have to know a lot of the things, but there will be a critical mass of people who know the truth and who understand what's going on and who become aware of these forces that are compelling people to try and spread certain ideologies and try and compel people to carry out activities and to try and influence political policy and public policy and to do unethical things in organizations like the CIA and CSIS and government organizations. There's going to be a critical mass of people that know about that and that aren't going to tolerate it, right? It's going to take a courageous individual to come forward and say, this is how it is. And then that person's going to inspire other people to say, yeah, I'm with him. This is not okay. We need to fix this. This is not how this goes. We need to build accountability. We need to build an accountability group. It needs to be the most important focus of the democratic institution so that we don't have Nazis or whatever ideology indoctrinated citizens coming in and spreading that and causing mass destruction like they're doing. So there's going to be a bunch of dominoes that start falling at a certain point when the critical mass is reached and people realize, wait a minute, we need to adjust our whole democratic institution here because we're missing a key piece. What they're missing is the immune system. So like in a human body, you have invaders coming in to try to destroy the thing, right? But your immune system goes around, the helper T cell identifies the problem and calls attention to it. That's like a whistleblower. Whistleblower identifies a problem, says, hey, there's a problem right there. That's going to destroy us if you let that continue, right? And so what's happened is we got a case of basically political AIDS happening where the helper T cells have become infected. And so there's people that are attacking the whistleblowers. This is like what happened to me in Canada here. Like I was and Julian Assange, for instance, what they're doing to him. So eventually we're going to find the cure. And when we find the cure, then all of a sudden the whole body, the global community will get healthier because we'll be able to recognize that there are these ideologies that are spreading. We're going to be able to identify them. We're going to be able to say, okay, this is not right. We need to correct this. And so there's going to need to be a whole lot of infrastructural changes. This is going to be a long-term project, but one of the things that's going to have to immediately stop is this Nazi type targeting of people. That's really not okay. You know, like even if they were actually picking real terrorists to do this to, this is not helping to prevent terrorism. No matter what, like this
Right.
is actually causing a person to become a malignant terror actor. So like even if that was like even if they were actually targeting the right people, which they're not, it would be a destructive thing regardless. So there's gonna be a lot of changes because there have to be. Because if they don't do all these changes, humanity will not survive. And guess what? Humanity survives. Guess what, everybody? Yeah, sorry, you didn't get to destroy humanity. We survived. Down the road, we're still around, and this is the way to solve it. And that's the only way to solve it. So this is what has to happen. So it is what is going to happen.
Right. Well, I thank you for doing the interview, and I will send you a copy of it. I'm gonna put it on YouTube, by the way, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
And then I'm
absolutely.
gonna send you a copy. So what I'll do is I'll send you a copy, and then you'll have to ask me for permission. Then I'll unlock it, through the drive, through Google Drive.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I really appreciate you coming out. If you'll hold on, I'm gonna stop recording now, and then we can part ways.
Yeah.
Okay.